But anyways, let's get into it, guys.
Know by now that
Fight scenes are complicated.
True!
in the video linked up in the corner of the screen, we discussed the micro of fight scene writing, sentence structure in prose, word choice, verb placement, and so on. But today we're discussing the macro of fight scene writing, broader ideas like scene structure, keeping it interesting, making the fight matter, magic systems, and realism. And maybe the algorithm might like this video a bit more because I get to use pretty pictures. And of course, a big thank you to patrons. The last couple of videos haven't done quite as well as I had hoped, so your support means that I'm able to continue doing more niche content like this. If you would like to join the Patreon Discord with me, then thank you very much, and the link is down below. Part 1. Scene structure. First and foremost, fight scenes are still scenes, and they follow the flow of one. They rise and fall in tension because a one-note scene is just not that interesting. The most common model for any given scene is of course the 3-act structure. There's a really fantastic video by Michael Tucker on Casino Royale's opening fight scene, which I recommend, but to build on our other video in which we discussed the fight in the Department of Mysteries and the Order of the Phoenix in detail, in Act 1, the fight with the Death Eaters begins. In Act 2, it escalates when Hermione is hurt and Neville's wand breaks. In Act 3 reaches its highest stakes when Harry's friends are captured and he is surrounded, before it is resolved with the arrival of the Order. Changing the stakes by complicating or escalating the problem the characters face multiple times like this makes for a more involving read because the obstacles change and actions have consequences. That's
kind of like how we were starting off with Cryogen. I wanted, like, the entire beginning, because the entire beginning, like, the antagonist is the ship, right? And it's Jervik fighting with the ship, trying to get the ship to do what the fuck it needs to do. First is like, oh, the autopilot isn't working. Okay, well, that's not too bad, right? You know? Okay, we got that. I can just manually do it. And then it's the Uniceps, and it's like, oh, for fuck's sakes, now I gotta walk through the entirety of the fucking trailer to fucking go reset these units manually. And it's like, again, it's just kind of an annoyance, but it's more out of the way. And then the next scene, oh dear God, now all of a sudden the life support system is failing for some reason. So it kind of just, like, ups the stakes, right? And then it really ups the stakes. And that's where it's like, it pushes him to the point of being like, okay, we need to sit down, we need to figure this shit out, and we need to get a new ship before this becomes my fucking coffin.
important. It makes the eventual resolution more satisfying if it goes well, or heartbreaking if it goes wrong. However, I do want to emphasize that you don't need pages and pages to do this. Makatsu does it in just 2 paragraphs in The Hunger. The fight begins, the fight escalates with the introduction of a knife, and it reaches its highest stakes when he's about to be stabbed, and is then resolved. The rise and fall makes this just 2-paragraph fight far more interesting than if it didn't change or escalate. In our other video on the sentence-by-sentence micro of a fight scene, we discussed where you should give detail, because showing every moment of a fight in equal close detail is boring and monotonous. It's difficult to read or...
And that's why it's like first person is really good, because it forces you to skip over things, because you can only analyze a certain amount of data within a certain time frame when you see or hear something, right? So if you're looking from Husai's perspective, you're not seeing anything else but what he's focusing on. So I think that was a really easy way for me to be able to keep that focus. And that's why I like writing in first person. It's easier on the inner thoughts. It gives that single perspective. And the way that I write is like... the best example I could give is I literally Quentin Tarantino. Where there's some scene or some event that's alluded to, but it's never shown. And the consequences of that event that's never shown is the twist at the end of the story. Such as, like, for instance, the Hateful Eight. We show up to the haberdashery, and Molly's not there. But there's a bunch of other people there. Well, we didn't see why Molly's not there, and we didn't see how the other people got there. Which is exactly what leads into the twist at the end of the movie. And it's like, you can do that with basically every single Tarantino film. Like, another one is like, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and the scene on the ranch. And it's, like, building up to that point, and then it's, like, it returns at the end. But what you don't see is the idea of, for instance, I don't know if you know what the movie's based on, right? Because I talked to my brother about this, and he had to rewatch it because he thought it was boring, and then he was just confused by the end. And then I was like, wait, you don't know what it's about? And he was like, what? And I was like, it's about Charles Manson. It's about the Manson murders. And he was like, oh! And he went and rewatched it, and I was like, Charlie! Pay attention to Charlie! And he's like, Charles Manson. And I was like, yes! You have to have a background in order to put the pieces together, but once you put the pieces together, it's like, oh, fuck! It all makes sense now. And it's like, that's exactly how I want to build my story. So when the monarch, like, turns, or when the viceroy turns...
Ray Helix is now following. Thank you
Ray
for following
Helix,
Ray Helix.
thank you for the
I hope
follow,
you're
good
enjoying the
sir.
stream less than 4 less than 3 plus 1.
Welcome.
Hi, sweetie. The
That
patron was
deserves
just
a
telling
toke.
me used to Arch Commander Consummate and thinks he'd be a perfect match for us.
I'm not that interested. Are you smoking?
Who?
You.
Why?
What, why? Are you smoking?
Maybe.
What? When did you start smoking?
1989-ish?
So you have been lying. Now it makes sense. The filled ashtrays, the burning pine-scented hairspray.
Yes, I'll say it. Her 3-pack-a-day voice?
Hi, Talk. I hope you're doing well today. Sorry I neglected to follow yesterday. Hey, no worries. Ray Helix, this is all good, man. All in due time, brother. All in due time. I'm the same way, because either, like, I'm streaming in the middle of the night, and then I work during the day, so it's like there's this, like, off-period time where, you know... But we all get around to it eventually, right? But yeah, having that idea for, like, when the Viceroy turns over at the end of the book. It's like, you're gonna instantly piece everything together to be like, okay, it makes sense now why he's so King James is vibing with us. Hell yeah, Sean. I had my door open earlier, and Daisy was in here all freaking out, but she, like, for some reason, I don't know why, she'll jump up on, like, the couch, and, like, she'll jump up on her cat scratcher, and it's like higher than my desk, let alone my chair, and she just refuses to jump up on my chair, or like my bed, or the desk. But like she'll jump up on shit where she's not supposed to jump up to, downstairs and shit. It's kind of annoying, because if we pick her up, she kind of freaks out. She doesn't like to be picked up. Rob's the only one who can pick her up. She's a little comfortable with that, because she thinks she's a traitor, because she's a slut. Slut cat! Always going for the best pets. Yeah, when the Viceroy turns, it's gonna make all the sense as to why the questions you have over his character. Because you're like, well, he's either a fucking senile old man who doesn't really fucking understand what the fuck is going on, or there's something lurking in the background that's like a bigger worry, essentially. And when he turns... and the actions that he takes, and of course it's like I said, I want the whole like monologue, like evil villain monologue as he's killing his son, just being like, yeah, casually, nonchalantly, this is how it is, deal with it, guys. Now we have all the information, now we have all the spies, you guys are fucking dead, bye. And then Fafnir, or they teleports them to the top of the tree, and then Fafnir comes in, because they've basically been waiting for that. First time I went to my wife's house, one of the cats, who only let her dad touch her, hopped into my lap. He turned to her and said, "Traitor! True!" They just know. Cats are fucking amazing, dude.
Watch, because we don't know what we're meant to be focusing on. In particular, we highlighted how detail is afforded to those fight scene beats which either shift the balance of power, have narrative importance, or character importance.
Yeah.
The three
So, like, for instance, against Like the ship again with the cryosphere. It's like it's a character building and development moment because the main character is like, if I don't get my shit together and start making more money and actually able to afford a fucking ship of my own, or like I figure out some way to get the company to repair the ship because I can't afford to repair the ship and I can only do it through company leisure, and that's like insanely expensive, and that's how they get you. So he's like fucked. So that's why when he goes to the canteen and he starts looking up his stock investments, he's looking for like new technology that's basically like the idea of him being put out of a job. So he's gonna be like, oh shit. Then he sees the Stargate tech, and then he looks at like the idea of like instant commands and stuff like that, or like instant data transportation, which is like higher level, like 8,000 to 9,000 technology. He's in like 5,000 to 6,000 technology, because I also want to show the gap in as time progresses, like there becomes a greater and greater gap in like old technology and new technology. And since his ship is basically from the 5,000s and now he's in like the 9,000s, his ship is so old and fucked up that it's basically untenable to run. But he doesn't have enough money to buy his own. So investing early in the Stargate program, hoping that it'll catch traction, is like, and he does another 15-year trip, and then it's like every time he's like, oh shit, okay, we actually made some fucking money here, you know? So these aren't just the penny stocks we're going for, and then it's like it actually gets placed on the real like high-end stock market, and he's making money, gets his own ship, kind of thing. But it's all about the ship teaching him that he has to get his shit together or he's gonna die, basically.
The act structure actually helps here, because each of those points of escalation that complicate the stakes are usually accompanied by one of these three things. In the last airbender, Aang's fight with Fire Lord Ozai escalates at 3 different points. The first act escalation is given extra screen time because it shifts the balance of power against Aang. He is now fleeing from Ozai. The second act escalation has a massive power shift in the fight, and character importance as Aang chooses not to kill Ozai with lightning and is then cornered, so that gets extra screen time too. And the third act escalation has all 3 of these.
The ultimate thing to do, take away his bending.
As Aang has to
so that's the most beautiful ending ever.
Defeat Ozai without killing, as well as a massive shift in the balance of power as
so
Aang
beautiful.
defeats Ozai. So don't just escalate the conflict by adding more to the stakes, but add tension through shifts in balance of power, and depth through character and narrative importance.
And that'd be like the ending fight thing, where it's like, you think it's all the characters versus the Monarch. Then it's like, oh shit, we lost the Viceroy, now it's us against the Viceroy and the Monarch. And then it's like, everyone gets teleported to the top of the tree. Okay, now we're against the environment because we can't breathe. We're basically freezing. Only our like full defensive magic spells that we prepared, before going into the fight, like a fucking raid boss. The only reason they're actually still alive. And then it's like, oh, Fafnir comes in. You're like, oh shit, Fafnir will be able to do something because he's so big, right? And he basically scoops up the characters in his hand and gets annihilated by the Monarch and the Viceroy. Like, just like, I want it literally to be the point where it's like, it's just his hand hits the ground. Like, there's nothing left of Fafnir. He's literally ashes besides like his hand. And his hand's like, eight city blocks? I'd say like the full like from wrist to like end of his talons. So like his palm itself is probably like 4.5 blocks. So something like 120 by 120 or something like that. 120 meters. Not feet. Like 300 feet. That might even still be too small. Because, like, relative to his body, right? So that should be, like, Well, we kind of already did the math, so that's kind of, yeah, actually, the escalation on it, because we were thinking aircraft carriers were a lot bigger than they are, like 1,200 feet, not 300 feet. Or, it's 1,200 feet, it's 300 meters. But we were thinking like 1,200 meters, like a kilometer. Like, the body width of Fafnir is like a kilometer. His wingspan for each wing is like 3 kilometers. So maybe his hand is actually bigger than that. Maybe his hand's like... No, 300 meters? That's like a third of his body, right? If it's a kilometer? Is that like... I feel like that's... And for like such a... Like a dragon? I think that's probably about the right size. About 300 meters. I'd say. Yeah, so upscale is about... His hands are like 300 meter by 300 meter. So the main character's like just kind of chilling in the center of it. And it just literally hits the fucking ground and they like bounce off of it. And it's like, you know, between like their magic and everything like that, they survive. And then they basically have to run from the Monarch and the Viceroy. And Husai says, okay, well, I'm not supposed to do this, and I know I'm not supposed to do this, but I'm going to show you the roots. And then he takes them into the tree, into the roots, where he goes multiple times during the story to interact with Gaia, which is basically like the roots are connected to the soulscape because the roots are connected into Gaia's shell. That's how far the roots have gone down. So it's like Gaia is kind of pouring her energy and consciousness into the tree itself and trying to fight off Anima's influence in that way. But by the end of it, the characters are fucked. And they literally have to run away, and that's the end of the book. And then they basically wake up in the soulscape with Gaia at the beginning of the next book. Levi, welcome. How's it going?
A second structure that I personally like comes from Cam Whalen's Structure in Your Novel, a book I do recommend. She gives a model which gets you to think about what's structurally around the fight scene that makes it meaningful. In A Storm of Swords, the fight between the Mountain and the Viper to decide Tyrion's fate is what Wayland would call the active scene. It's got a goal, it's got conflict, and it's got a disaster.
Being here a bit, just lurking. Hell yeah, Levi, sounds good.
The scene is followed by Tyrion reflecting on how he is now condemned to death, where he then decides, I'll die with the taste of blood in my mouth. This scene is what Wayland calls a reactive scene. It's got a character's reaction, a dilemma about what to do next, and a decision. In a sense, this reactive scene is what makes the active fight scene meaningful, because it forces character introspection, and that is interesting. Structurally, pairing your active fight scene with a reactive scene gives the reader room to breathe, to relax after such high tension, and gives weight to the fight scene itself as they reflect on it. The point is, if your fight scene doesn't demand a reactive scene, then the fight scene may not have the right focus. It's a good way to figure out if you're just adding in fight scenes to artificially ramp up the tension.
Which is kind of what I did in Chapter 1. And that's why we need to, like, rework how we're introducing the characters. Because it just doesn't quite fit together. But that's where I realized...
Mike rated my stream with 6 viewers. Welcome, Raiders, to
Hey,
the
buddy!
stream.
Welcome! How's it going? Welcome to the stream.
Oh, I will be there.
Hell yeah, dude. Let's take a tote. Somebody want to give a shout out to Postal Mike? He was playing Ashes of Creation.
Daddy's home.
Super awesome game if you haven't seen it. Unfortunately, the alpha's like $150 to get into, so I'm waiting until... It'll be the next MMO I play, that's for sure, but I'm waiting for it to come out of beta. Then I'll play it.
Quit hockey, I heard you the first time. Lady, no! Mom!
Killer Instinct, welcome, welcome. How is it going? So, I'm Intoxication. Welcome to the stream. We are discussing fight scenes in books. Did anyone shout you out? Sean? Oh, Sean. Actually, Sean. Boom. There we go. Hopefully it works. Yeah, for some reason, sometimes the shout out is like broken. So let's just go like this. Where are you? There you go. Everyone go follow Postal Mike. Alright. We are discussing fight scenes and, I guess in this case, how to set them up. No worries, man. Sometimes the string thing does the shout out, and then sometimes it freaks out like that. I don't know why.
Killer underscore instinct
Oh,
underscore
Killer Instinct!
is now following.
Thank you for
following Killer underscore instinct underscore. I hope you are enjoying
Hi,
the stream
sweetie.
less than
Hell
4
yeah,
less than
brothers.
He's
2 plus
telling me
1.
used to Arch Commander Consummate and thinks he'd be a perfect match for us.
I'm not that interested. Are you smoking?
Maybe.
You.
Why?
What? Why are you
I'm
smoking?
retarded.
Maybe.
What? When did you start smoking?
1989-ish?
So you have been lying. It all makes sense. The filled ashtrays, the burning pine-scented hairspray.
Yes, I'll say it. Her 3-pack-a-day voice?
You can't afford it anymore, Sean? Is it just not working for you? I'll give you one.
Do not drink water. Do not leave your seat. Do not move your feet. Do not stretch. Do not go to the bathroom. Have another toke.
True. That's what it's all about, boys. But yeah, we are discussing fight scenes and how my book, because I'm writing a book, is all about... we were just discussing the ending of the book. And as well as the cryogen story that we are writing today, how the main character is fighting against his ship, and his ship is basically teaching him lessons about himself to get himself, you know, into a better position so he doesn't wind up dying on this godforsaken piece of shit raft that he's been occupying for basically 10 years. Well, he does fuck all. So, more of a character development through self-action and, like, environmental emphasis, as opposed to an actual physical fight. Because I always like to take the basic ideas of whatever we're reacting to, in this case, like the fight scenes, and then placing them in a very out-of-place manner, so it can give me a more experimental touch towards it, which allows me to, allows me to judge how well of a grasp I have of the actual idea, if I can pull it out of its nature, like natural home, natural habitat, and throw it into like the wilds and see if basically the formula holds together. And then you can get like a really interesting, you know, concept where you're trying, you know, once you have the direction that you're pushing across, that like the ship is the main enemy, and that's why the character, like, and then the character having to like continuously repair it, deal with different things breaking down, just hating the ship in general, and it not being their own ship gives it a lot of, you know, why is the main character in this position? And then it's simply because the main character is just a lazy piece of shit. And then by the end of it, it just shows how much of a lazy piece of shit he is, because the idea is being addicted to, like, addicted to a higher number through the stock market of basically he's a futuristic trucker, and he just does cryo sleeps, so he skips like thousands of years sometimes. So, like, for the last 10 years of his life, it's been, like, 8,000 years in, like, reality. Because he's been sleeping so much. Like, he has 1 week at, like, the dry dock, then he sleeps for, like, 15 years. Then he has, like, a week, and then he sleeps for 15 years. And he's been doing that for, like, 10 years. Because he's just, like, again, a lazy piece of shit. He doesn't want to get it. Doesn't want to do anything. And, he kind of gets over that and then falls back into his old habits by the end of the story. Because he gets addicted to the stock market and gaining a shit ton of money on the stock market, but he has so much money that he just can't do anything with it, but it doesn't matter, he just still wants to have more. And then he sleeps his way basically through the end of existence. Just trying to gain that money, man. Just trying to gain that money. And it also gives us, like, soft world building on exposition for, like, the currency, because it's going to be, like, cryptocurrency that's connected to NFTs, and basically the idea is that it's a centralized AI that can use, like, quantum mechanics for data sending, essentially, and it's, like, you know, quantum entangled with all of the systems, so it can all instantly receive data, so it can live judge the value that the public places on certain things, and then those become cryptocurrencies with NFTs. So you have, like, sports, religion, like, basically any topic. Words, like gravity. So there's, like, cryptocurrency connected to, like, all of these kinds of things. And the biggest stock is to get a cryptocurrency at its beginning with something that doesn't have, like, something that doesn't exist yet. Which hasn't happened for a long time. But the Stargate, that's new technology. That could change everything. So he invests at the beginning, and then he becomes one of those high rollers because of that investment. All right, let's carry on.
A reactive scene might just be changing strategies as well. The detective lays a trap for the killer, but the killer fights and escapes, and the detective has to reflect and figure out what their next step is. Part 2. At risk of titling a part of my video like a struggling married couple of 30 years, keeping it interesting. How do you keep a long fight scene interesting? We discussed how you escalate the fight and complicate the obstacles characters face to keep it from feeling monotonous, but my friends, there's only so long you can do this before you're building a third, bigger, badder
Nice,
Death
one away
Star.
from 160.
3 escalations
Nice.
in the 3-act structure works for that reason, but this does present a problem for long fight scenes or battle scenes. What you'll find is that those like the Battle of...
Like, an example for this would be, the very first chapter, not the first fight, but the fight against the Emerald Weapon. It's like you've got the doors opening, the entire Alliance walking into the room. Oh, sorry. You've pre-buffing where everyone does all of their buffs, and you get all, like, the magic escalation and everything like that. And then the doors open, the Emerald Weapon turns on, they all go into the room, and it's like everyone lines up into their formations, and then they try to attack the treads. Doesn't really work, so they kind of form around and underneath the treads to stop it from moving. Then the range go for the head. Then Vimkul titles, blows up the head. All the mages follow with magic bursts or rift fissures, and then implosions. And then the Emerald Weapon lowers itself down, so all the main characters have to, like, move, like, all the tanks and melees have to kind of, like, move out of the way. But they've, like, basically damaged all of its treads, so it can't move. Then its arms start to flail, and main tanks put up a shield, but, you know, main character basically loses his arm. Then the rest of the, like, melee's title use, like, their ultimate abilities kind of thing, hack and slash their way through it. Now the cannon's, like, basically on the ground, and its chest opens, and it's like the massive cannon, and then the cannon starts to charge. And then the Time Mage titles and basically says, okay, we're fucked, everyone throw up your best defenses for these things, and then passes the fuck out and dies. And then it's like 15 or 20 people out of the 75 are left, because they all put up their max defense, but it could only sustain, like, the central area because the cannon blast was so bad. And the Time Mage's title is to go back 1 minute in time, but it's a 10-year cooldown. so it's like there's kind of a ton of shit happening during the entire fight. And then it's like going back and forth between the mages and Aethar giving commands and like the melees jumping in and then the tanks trying to like fend off the arms, and it's like that's probably one of the shorter long fights, but that fight is going to come back again because they have to fight the Emerald Weapon like when they go back to the 100-Year Quest later on.
Pelennor Fields and the Return of the King are composed of numerous small objectives: rally the troops, defend the gates, overrun the army, kill the Witch King, allowing multiple escalations and de-escalations as they achieve or fail in their objectives, extending the fight scene while maintaining a cohesive structure that isn't exhausting, just constantly and repetitively ramping up the stakes. On top of this, longer fight scenes often use multiple perspectives of characters who each have their own objective or struggle inside that battle. Pippin, Merry, Eowyn, and Gandalf in particular during the Battle of Pelennor Fields. If you are writing a long fight scene, then allow...
Yeah, see, I don't really have that kind of nuance in the first chapter. And this is what I realized after I wrote the first chapter was, damn, I'm not good enough writer to do this. So that's why we're here.
The reader the catharsis of objectives being achieved or failed, multiple releases of tension for better or worse, allow the tension to de-escalate at points before ramping it up again. But crucially, one thing that makes a fight scene immensely more interesting is turning it into a problem-solving scene. I love it when people do this. In Leviathan Wakes, James S. A. Corey establishes right at the start of the fight that the Rocky didn't have enough
It's
torpedoes
the Rossi!
to fire shot after
The
shot at the
Rocinante!
station from far off and hope that one of them made through the point defense fire. There's the puzzle. How do we best use our limited supplies of torpedoes? It's clear, it's simple, and they do a lot with it. The conflict in this scene isn't just a shootout where the only problem is can we kill him before he kills us. Instead, the fight is a multi-dimensional puzzle that the characters need to figure out, using each torpedo wisely.
Alex is so
The Pirates
good.
of the Caribbean film series is basically famous for this tactic. The fight scene between Will, Jack, and forgettable captain guy isn't just them trying to kill each other, but a problem-solving scene as they each try to get the key. Almost every single fight scene in that series has a secondary problem-solving objective, and that's part of what makes them so fun and interesting. It also allows you to complicate the tension. They might be succeeding in one objective, but failing in the other, or forced to choose between them, which is a great thing to do in a fight scene. Part 3. At the risk of sounding like a mid-40s single male realizing he's wasted his life on mobile games, does it really matter? Chuck Sambucino, longtime editor and writer, puts it, for a fight to have meaning, it must be essential to your story.
Yes.
Ask yourself what the
purpose of this scene is not even necessarily to reveal the Emerald Weapon. It's to show the idea that through the other scenes, like for instance the scene in the lab, when when Reef destroys everything, and then it starts to repair itself. And at some point in time, there's supposed to be, you know, the comment of, like, if there have been so many adventurers before, why don't we see any bodies? Like, no one's ever, like, I don't understand. But it's like, that scene is supposed to show you, oh, it's a self-repairing, self-cleaning dungeon. So it would basically just recycle the bodies and the gear of the characters. So maybe even actually, you know what would be an interesting thing to add in there? Is have, like, the defenses of the 100-Year Quest have the armor and weaponry of previous parties. So it's like in those few fight scenes before you get to the Emerald Weapon, I think this would probably make it more impactful, is you would see them and there would be references to the armor and weapons that some of the enemies have. Like, imagine, like, a spectral kind of warrior made out of energy that's just wearing, like, armor and has a weapon. So it's like you could clearly see the set of armor and the weapon itself, And because only the greatest of the great ever get to go into the 100-year quest, all of the people know about the previous people that have gone in. So they're pointing out, oh shit, that's such and such as what's. How is that what? So maybe that'll make it more impactful. As well as later on, like there'll be a couple of scenes like that, right? Just to kind of give an idea to the reader of, okay, the place repairs itself, and it takes the gear of the people that it's killed in order to replenish its stockpile of, like, soldiers to defend itself. And... Smokey! Welcome, welcome. I don't think you can put any capitals in it. I think it just has to be either the capital T or just straight underneath. But I get you, brother. I get you. Here we go. Okay. I get you. But yeah. See, this is why we do this, because then I look at things and I go, no, the entire first chapter is fucked. Because everything is rushed. Everything doesn't need to be there. That's why it doesn't coagulate well. Like, the scenes just kind of jump and you don't feel like there's any meaning behind it. Like, there has to be kind of, like, I can't just, like, give no context and no meaning behind it. The first thing we say in the chapter is that everyone else who's gone through that door has never returned. So that's important key to note. So that means there's been other people there that have gone through it. And then you find people's gear of people that have died, and they know that these people have gone in there because they know their weaponry and armor. Because they've studied it. Because they were famous. And the lab repairing itself shows that the things repair themselves, and that's why there's no damage to anything, and everything looks pristine as fuck. And then finally, when you get to the emerald weapon, and they defeat the emerald weapon, it's like the idea of, oh, no one's ever gotten here before. But they have the feeling that no one ever actually has gotten that far before. And that's when they wake up Fafnir. And the reason Fafnir never woke up before then is because Fafnir was just having a 600-year nap, chilling underground, being like, fuck this shit, we'll go back to war in a bit, I'm going to sleep. And they woke him up. And the current story is 50 years later. So he's had 50 years to build up the Beastmen army for the events that happened for Garuda. And the event in the first chapter where Husai receives the video of all of this happening is extremely important to the story. It's like acting. The most important part of acting is reacting. You sort of put yourself into the character so you react realistically to the events implied. Doing that in your writing helps a lot. Yes, Sean. And it helps a lot more than I'm an extremely emotional person. And it does not take much for me to connect to something. So I love deep, like I said, like the connection between Husai and Hildebrand. It's like you can tell and you know that even though they're different species, like Husai like almost has a reverence for Hildebrand. Even though it's like, yeah, she's awesome, like she's a crafter, she's an adventurer, she's a scholar, like she's everything that's, he's like, holy crap, you know, she can do everything. But she thinks of him as like this kind of guy forsaking his post who's trying to play at being an adventurer until like he sits down and talks to her, and then that whole moment of them like basically like having a moment where Husai tells her about all the things that like he's not supposed to talk about to other people, and her perspective on him completely changes. And from that moment on, because she's his crafter, you notice, or Husai notices, what she, like how she treats his armor and gear. And it's like, if you've ever watched Full Metal Alchemist, it's the way that Winry handles Ed's automail. With like reverence and like love, and the fact that she carries the kit around with her at all times if it's ever needed. Dorky little cousin trying to get her attention, that's what I thought you were going for. I mean, it fits, right? And if you can come up with that from it, then I'm like, okay, it's good enough, right?
Purpose of the fight scene is? Is it to reveal character, to set up a crucial plot point that will have ramifications later? If you remove the fight scene, does the storyline completely fall apart? It should.
Yeah, because it wouldn't. People would be asking, okay, well, why is there no damage to the dungeon if people have gone in there before? Why is there no sign of anyone else ever going in there? Why are the puzzles not solved? Why are the enemies not killed? Right? So it's like the dungeon obviously hasn't been cleared yet. And there is the question of when the emerald weapon is defeated, the dungeon doors open. And that's the reason why Torg can get out, is because the dungeon doors are open. And one of the things that you'll learn is that when a dungeon is completed, its doors basically open, and that's like a defeat of the defense mechanism, because essentially they're like super advanced cities from the past that are dormant, but only slightly dormant, because they fell out of the sky essentially and crashed, so they're extremely damaged, but they still, the parts that do work keep fixing themselves to continue to work. But the things that are like buried too deep and like completely crushed and destroyed, they just simply don't have the room to fix it. So it's even like the materials that they're using to fix it comes from its own destroyed pieces when it fell out of the sky. So it's like all the pieces connect once you get enough of the information, as long as that information is there, right? So that's why I included those scenes, but I didn't put enough emphasis behind them for them to feel like they were meaningful in any way. That's why everyone said it feels jumpy, and they don't see the point in not just starting with the emerald weapon fight and just kind of revealing the characters as like a turn, because like I'm treating it as like a turn-based like combat system essentially, right? Like I have an idea of how fast does the enemy attack, how fast do they attack, what's the order of operations of like characters, and then it basically goes through each character, and it's usually like 4 or 5 characters act, then the enemy does something, then 4 or 5 characters act, then the enemy does something, 4 or 5 characters act, and then the enemy does something, and it kind of just keeps going in that way of revealing like characters that are like, you know, healing from the background, putting up barriers to block stuff, trying to decision make in the background and like shot call, and the whole thing of it is supposed to be like going into a raid for the first time, like a raid boss, and it's like you're trying to figure out the mechanics, you're trying to stay on top of making sure that everything is secure for like backup in case something goes wrong, like what are your like target points to run away if you need your tanks to get together and everyone to get behind your tanks, like where do you call them, like how do you make this shot call as easy as possible in the raid. And that's kind of the idea of how I want to present the fight, but I don't think I did a good job of that.
I may not agree as strongly as he puts it here, but he does have a point. We discussed how it should demand a reactive scene before. That is one way to tell whether it kind of matters. And
that's where we have like the introspection from Husai, because Husai is feeding us information throughout the chapter, which is a lot of the parts that are completely missed in the first draft. But we need to go back and be like, okay, to each scene, either Husai has to have a reaction to it or a preemptive of being like, oh my god, is it going to show this? And then it shows it, and it's like, oh fuck. And it's like the idea of maybe we don't go fade to black or static. It's like him watching the entire video, but we're only seeing clips of him watching the video, right? Because most of it's like introspection while it's playing, talking about the video itself. And being like, first of all, when he's like, oh my god, it's Torg. This is the 100 Years Quest. Where did this video come from? I've never seen anything like this. No one's ever seen anyone come out of the 100-Year Quest. I would stay in the viewpoint of the shot caller in control of the fight. He sees things that everyone does and calls out commands when needed. That I think is the better vantage for the fight scene you are writing. But technically, Sean, it's like the biggest problem with it is that you're watching like an old grainy video through Husai's eyes. So like you don't get a lot of detail, and it's a very old video, so it's like very patchy and jumpy. It's basic, like I'm imagining it like getting an old VHS, like a 30-year-old VHS, and you know it hasn't been kept well. Let's just say it's traded some hands over the years, and it just, you know, unlike where like a DVD probably just straight up wouldn't play. At least the VHS, you'd get most of it, but it'd probably be faded out, right? If you're old enough to know what VHS is. So, and it's the recording of Torg, and he's a machinist, and it's basically he has a recording pearl on a drone. And the drone is looking like third person down from above him, while he's in the back watching everything. And he's controlling the drone. He's got like gunner drones and shit like that. Because his character is all about like flying machines around and controlling other machines. That's why they brought him, so he could stay in the back in case anything happened, and he's a thief. So he can use flee and just run the fuck away as fast as possible. So does that give you like a better idea of where the vantage point of the fight is? And then we kind of like describe throughout the thing like the drone moving around and how it's moving and Torg's controlling it, and like what its, you know, its purpose is there to basically record the event. So it's staying out of the fights but trying to keep an eye on things, right? So you kind of get this overhead vantage view of what's going on. If that makes sense.
And you'll know this as well, you've seen a Transformers movie. Fight scenes have a tendency to be a bit pointless, added in to spice up the story with a side of death. But I think the best way to put it is that to make the fight scene essential, you've got to figure out what question your fight scene is really asking beyond will they get out alive. This fight in The Shining is asking whether there is any humanity left in Jack Torrance. The final fight in Sanderson Skyward is asking whether Spencer will let go of her ego and eject from the flight craft. And this fight in The Order of the Phoenix is asking whether Harry will learn the prophecy made about him. These are narrative and character questions. See, a good fight isn't merely an obstacle to the next story beat.
Yeah, and the emerald weapon, you put the emerald weapon, the sapphire weapon, and the ruby weapon together, and you get the diamond weapon. And the diamond weapon is the weapon that the Monarch used to pull the moon out of the sky. So showing the emerald weapon and getting the emerald weapon is extremely important to the story, because that's going to be their ultimate trump card at the end to try and fight the Monarch, is that they have the diamond weapon. Which is basically his like ultimate nuclear option of like genociding all of the Beastmen. But then the dragons carried the Beastmen on their backs, and they built like towns on the dragons and carried them around for like 150 years while the Earth was kind of freaking out after the disaster, and then they kind of landed them back down. But the population of Beastmen is significantly lower. But that caused a bunch of other problems, but again, that's all kind of past era stuff that we don't really need to get into.
Which is how some of them end up being, but they help develop a deeper narrative or character question as the fight happens, that is teased and perhaps answered by its end, making the fight itself crucial to the story and its payoff. Part 4. I know my audience, and I know that magic systems are basically heroin to you lot. So let's talk about how magic changes fight scenes. Firstly, let's talk about a problem I somewhat have.
And like, okay, so this is the structure of magic. So, or let's say combat. So this is combat structure. And we've got physical DPS infuse an element into their weapon. Short time. 1 to 2 seconds. Wherever the physical weapon is located at the time the magic is infused, then it creates a fissure in the soulscape where the magic returns to, thinning the layer between dimensions. If the opposite element is then used in the same manner with in conjunction with a physical object. Now this is where things can get very interesting because of how magic works. This is very specifically physical object, but this makes something very important in the story even more important, which is like materials for the mages to use spells. Because of how magic works, having certain physical items to enhance how the magic works. For instance, magic works through the conjuring of consciousness, right? So you imagine what you want, and then through sound, you bring that into existence. And then through movement, you control whatever it does. But the best kinds of mages take the physical world elements and expand those. They don't create them. For instance, you don't create a massive ball of fire, because that takes a shit ton of mana. You grab a bunch of straw, you light a small spark, ignite all of the straw, and then as it turns into fire, you grab that fire and control that fire. So all you're actually really doing is controlling and enhancing the fire that already exists. So that's why spell catalysts are extremely important for mages, because then mages can use, in conjunction with physical object, to do essentially self magic burst skill chains. So mages can be fucking OP as shit if they know exactly what they're doing. But it's literally like Goku going like Super Saiyan 3, like Kaioken 100, and then using like Ultra Instinct. It's like there's a layer of stacked abilities on top of each other, and each one is like more OP than the other one. And it just it scales ridiculously out of hand to the point that, like, if you know what you're doing with a minimum amount of mana, you can cause an extreme amount of devastation with the right tools. But that's a consumption item, which means you need a lot of it, which means mages need need to not run out of it, essentially. And if you do, that diminishes your ability as a mage. So mages are usually sparing till the end. And that's why they wouldn't use, like, this is why you wouldn't do this as a mage. Everyone would be like, oh, why wouldn't you just always do that? It's like, you don't have an infinite supply of stuff, right? So, at some point in time, injecting a physical weapon with magic as a melee, or a ranger with an arrow, or a gunner with a bullet, or, you know, any kind of throwing weapon, or any kind of anything, it's just a physical object, then they can create a fissure. And then if you use the opposite element on the fissure, it creates a rift. So imagine it being like, the fissure would be like this. Or I guess, actually, no, it'd be like this, right? So we did like that, so it's kind of like, I don't know. But either way, so that's like, and then the rift would be like, you know, like that. So it's like, it creates kind of a fissure, and then a rift. Or it'd be like, you know, like fissure, and then rift is like, this is like a small visualization, right? It's like a small fissure, and then it just bigger. And then if the original element of pure magic is cast at the spot, then the rift implodes, causing magnified damage. And that's like the basic way that combat works. You want to get a shit ton of mages with a little bit... How are you, Valiant Boy? Welcome, welcome. How are you? I am good, good sir. How are you, good sir? We are doing fight scenes today. How to master them. And we are describing in some way, shape, or form the combat structure of magic and how it basically works. So you'd have like a minimum amount of melee or ranged, so you don't even have to have melees, and the melees and the tanks stay in the back, and it's usually just ranged, and mages. And then they go all the fuck out and explode as much as they can, right? Like you hit a rift, and then like all the mages can hit that rift within a certain amount of time with their magic to amplify, and the more that you do, the more magnitude it is. So you get like, you know, 100 people to all cast in one spot on a rift. It's like fucking insane damage, right? Weapon skill chain, magic burst. Although we can't call it that, so it's, I don't know, question mark, because I don't know what we're gonna call them. Like, we could call them weapon skills. We could maybe imbue? Fissure, rift, implode. I think that works. Ideas. Combat structure. Okay. So yeah, so the like working in conjunction with the melees and the mages is very important for dealing damage.
Have with hard magic systems. Authors are often so focused on showing us how cool this thing they made is, particularly with heart magic, that they leave behind character and theme even at the climax to show us how this cool thing they made works. Look how flashy and pretty.
Well, it's not really that. It's just an imagination, right? Like, it's basic Final Fantasy. So it's like, I'm not even trying... The spectacle isn't the magic itself. The spectacle is the inner workings of how the magic works. And because you can see the inner workings through Husai's mind, you can basically interpret how magic works. And that's also supposed to be like an inference of it in the very first scene when he first sees the video and he locks the door with a magical seal. And it shows like how he performs magic to give you a little bit of a hint, and the magic is performed on a greater scale in the video to give you the idea of how things work in this world in a combat sense, on an adventuring scale. And it's like I said, it's like the tutorial at the beginning of the game where you get to see all the mechanics that are possible in the game, but you're not there yet.
Bro number between 1 and 100.
Valiant boy, you know I'm gonna choose 1. You know I'm gonna choose 1. I know what you're doing, and I know I'm choosing 1. So you better do 69 next time.
Valiant Boy Twitch cheered X1. Thank you so much, Valiant Boy Twitch. Your support is much appreciated. Less than 4.
Save your damn money, Valiant boy!
LMAO.
I'm giving you my earth germs. I'm gonna kill you.
I love you, Valiant boy. Fuck you,
Best
brother.
game ever.
Alien.
Not an alien.
Best
no, I'm a henchman. And you're not a vendor, brother.
True, Valiant boy.
Thanks, friend.
True.
Yeah, I doubt that.
Would you believe I'm Brock Sampson's long lost son?
If that were true, I don't think I would have caught you so easily.
Sure, again.
I had a lighter up my ass.
Again.
Now I believe you're Hank's friend.
I do to all streamers, that's amazing.
True, Valiant boy. You would. You would.
Pretty it is.
The bitter.
In contrast, in the last
True.
Airbender, and yeah, I'm just gonna keep talking about it because I
It's
love
good.
that series. Yeah. Zuko redirects lightning at his father during the climactic eclipse scene. A fantastical and awesome moment of Zuko using the magic system in a cool way that was set up earlier
number
in
MFK.
Season 2, paying off here.
Well,
But the
69,
writers also
duh.
tied his character arc to this ability.
No.
Having him fall in a
420.
turmoil that is resolved in this same
420.
moment when he chooses his own path, and playing into the theme of redemption always being possible. It's not just a cool fight scene, but it carries depth too, and that's what really makes it worthwhile. Point being, climactic fight scenes
You
will
just
be
do
far more
42.
satisfying if they have character and thematic depth
420.
first and magic system.
You gotta do
only
4 and then
second.
20. I mean, that's
So
less
let
than
these elements be
that's
resolved
less
at the
than
same
42.
time so that the payoff to your magic system isn't left behind by character.
only
and
24.
character isn't left behind by the magic system.
So yeah, do
It's
4
just
then
something
20.
To be aware of. It's a flaw I commonly read
Valiant
in
Boy
the
Twitch
source
cheered
story.
X42.
The second
Thank
thing
you
is the
so
use
much,
of a
Valiant
literary
Boy
tool.
Twitch. Your support is much appreciated. Less than 4, less than 3, plus 1.
Guys, am I abusing Valiant boy?
Dude, what are you doing?
I'm giving you my earth germs. I'm gonna kill you with my cold. Die, alien.
Not an alien, dillweed. I'm a henchman. And you're not a venture, brother. Who the hell are you?
I'm Hank's friend.
Yeah, I doubt that.
Would you believe I'm
Are you
Brock
smoking?
Sampson's long lost
Iconic.
son?
If that were true, I don't think I would have caught you so easily.
I couldn't run because I had a lighter up my ass.
Okay, now I believe you're Hank's friend.
True. True. Anyways.
Called Chekhov's guns. You've probably heard one of
Yeah, and that's Chekhov's guns is actually literally like Fafnir, and the 100-Year Quest, and Emerald Weapon, because they're shown at the very beginning, and they're used later on. Extremely important. And not only are they used or found later on, but they're found out even later on in the second book that holy shit, actually that's the weapon, because they didn't know that that was the Emerald Weapon until they learn everything that the Diamond Weapon was basically dismantled by the monarch after he pulled the moon out of the sky while everyone was inside of the dome before the tree actually started to grow, and he moved everyone out of the dome into the tree. And that was the first generation of people, and those people knew about everything from the past, but they just, like, I don't know if it's they didn't pass down the knowledge, they did pass down the knowledge, but it's been skewed over time, or it's like, you know, there's just no recording of it because they didn't bring anything with them, they didn't have anything. Like, I don't know how the monarch gets them to go into the tree, like, willingly, giving up all the technology. Maybe they don't, maybe only some of them do, maybe there's still some down there for a little bit, and then that's why it's like, you know, maybe there's hidden ones still that are welcoming to the lost bloodline, and they find out the lost bloodline, and then that whole area becomes the underground for the bad adventurers. But yeah, it's quite a bit of backstory lore and world building that all comes together from those few scenes. Say a hello to the El Legote, Levi. True!
Of its many variations before. If in the first act you have hung a pistol on the wall, then in the following one it should be fired. Otherwise, don't put it there. And in reverse, a gun that goes off in the third act should be set up beforehand. Fight scenes involving magic systems are really dependent on the reader understanding the rules of what's possible and what's not. Go watch my 3-part series on them. Because of this, fight scenes are often used early on to give exposition about how a magic system works, showing it rather than telling it. Shad Brooks does this in The Shadow of the Conqueror, and Sanderson does this a lot in his work, writing briefly from the perspective of a character experienced in the magic system right at the start, to establish those rules so that later on, the magic system, or the gun, can go off.
The other side. That is literally one of the first scenes, is it's in like the third paragraph, is him using magic for the first time. Like showing people how magic works. And actually invoking magic. Which then, through his thought process and everything, you can understand how, you know, and he's basically gonna be like commentating on the video. Because again, it's supposed to feel like he's talking to the main character. Or sorry, he's talking to you, the reader, right? It's like the main character is talking to you, the reader. And you feel this throughout the entirety of the first book until you find out about Gaia. It's like the confiding in the reader. But it's actually, he's talking to Gaia, he just doesn't know it, and the reader doesn't know it. So it feels like he's talking to the reader, and then when the reveal is, it's like, oh shit, he wasn't talking to me! It's like a fourth wall break.
Side of this coin is that if you're going to use a magic fight scene to resolve the tension of your story at the climax, then the gun, the magic system, needs to be set up beforehand. Often with what's called a pre-scene. It happens in the hard sci-fi of The Three-Body Problem by Luke.
So I guess that would be, the pre-scene would be him putting the seal on the wall to show he's imagining a pitch black wall, and then he speaks the words, and then he does the motions, and he invokes the magic into the real world. And that's like, because magic is supposed to be like a song and dance. So imagine it like Airbender, but with like chanting. Some people use words, some people have their own things, and it's like intuitive to the person, because how magic works is based on intent and like consciousness. So some people say, oh, you know, the movement is more important. Some people say understanding is more important, which it kind of is to an extent. Some people say what materials you use are important. For like, I always forget the word. I gotta write it down somewhere. Like spell ingredients, essentially. That one always trips me up. Yeah, spell catalysts. Jesus. Spell catalysts. You would get that one, Sean. You would get that one. And some people think, you know, it's what you say is important. So some people will follow certain chants for saying things. Like, some people will say, fire! And that's where, like, the idea of the main character, he uses, like, degrees. Because he's basically set them into... you set them into tiers, right? So it's like the idea in Final Fantasy, because it's a Final Fantasy-based book, how he uses magic is a tier system. So there's like a way that other people use magic, but his way of using magic is basically superior to everyone else's way of using magic. Because of how he can classify it in his mind to make it so he only does specific things. Which would be like fire, fire 2, fire 3, fire 4, fire 5, fire 6. Just like in Final Fantasy. And then you have like the ancient magics like flare, flare 2, flare 3. God forbid, flare 4. Or burst. Or any of those. And, the ability of the mage is basically how much do you understand the world that you can manipulate it, and that's how well you can bring what you imagine into reality, and how well you can control what you bring into reality. And that gives like a... like within a paragraph you get that entire concept. But it's like even with like characters that aren't dancers or bards or anything like that, the way that they move around and engage. And that also shows, you know, like the way that they move their bodies, whether they're an insectoid or they're an avian or they're an octopi, because there'll be different language to set up each species. And that's another really big point that I didn't pick up on chapter 1, is emphasizing why I'm introducing each of these characters. I'm introducing each of these characters not as the characters, as a species. It's me introducing the species that exist in the book. And by bringing in multiple of each of them, it gives you an overbroad view of, oh, these are the 3 main races, octopi, avian, and insectoid. Because there's like 6 or 7 of each of them. And there doesn't seem to be anything other than that. Except for Husai, the main character. For specifically putting his elbows and bending his knees. And then how you describe other characters. You're like, wait, is Husai an insectoid? Because insectoids have knees. But like, the avians don't have knees. And octopi don't have knees. So... I didn't know he was an insectoid, but everyone calls him an octopi. So again, you're going to be like really confused about Husai, and then it's like, oh, well, obviously he's human. And it's like, oh, well, why is he human? Well, why is he the only human? And it's like, Husai's like, exactly, bro! Why am I the only human? Like, my ultimate goal in life would be to have that epic 4th wall break, where it's like, it's set this up, and then it's like, it gives you some sort of information, and then you have that thought in your head, and then you flip the next page, and it's Husai saying, dude, exactly! Or something like that, you know what I mean? And I like, that's the kind of vibe I want to give from the book, where it's like, the reader's just like, holy shit, you know? Like, you put the perfect amount of knowledge so you knew when to put the last piece so the whole picture came together so you could blow my mind with the next fucking page. Like, that's why I'm like, I'm not good enough to do this. We gotta get better. But one day, we'll be able to fucking do this. And I'd say, like, we've significantly improved in the last 3 months. And we're not even, like, halfway through this series. And this is just, like, one series that's, like, 6 years old. So it's like, damn, we got a lot of shit to do. But, anyways, back to the video.
Probably the most mind-bending book I have ever read that I do recommend if you want your mind to be screwed.
The series is
But
pretty good.
A simple example that you would know of is Luke closing his eyes and trusting the Force to deflect a couple of lasers about halfway through the film, and then later trusting the Force to destroy the entire Death Star.
Yup.
This is an example of a pre-scene, a form of foreshadowing where something major in the story happens on a smaller scale in some way early on in the story. This is particularly relevant to
And again, that's like the wall that Husai makes, right? It's like symbolistic of the triumph of getting through the 100-year quest. It could be killing the Emerald weapon. It could be, you know, the idea that Fafnir was locked behind a wall and now they've taken that wall down, because that's what Husai does at the end of the first chapter. Like, there's so many ways that you could find easily to connect all these dots, right? And it's like, if you don't have like 5 or 6 of them, it's like, is your idea really thought out? So even, like I said, like, this is all, most of this is just putting things that are in my head into like vocabulary that I can categorize them so they're easily referenceable. Like, for instance, saying, like, I've never really talked about him casting the magic on the wall, on his door to his office. And it's also, like, the way that Zayd reacts to it, too. And it's, like, the way that Husai speaks to him and saying that, like, his naive confidence that he's always had is, like, unsettling to Husai to the point that it snaps him back to reality, to being like, okay, hold on, I got other things I gotta deal with, you know? Like, this just had to pop up right fucking now, but we got other shit we gotta do, so we'll put this on the back burner, let me grab that, nobody can see that, let's get the fuck out of here, take down that barrier, and let's go. So it's like, it even has the interaction on the other end of being like, what would happen if someone was to try to get through that door? And, like, maybe there should even be an emphasis from Husai of being like, I can't believe he can actually stand in front of the door enough to be able to actually call across it. Because the entire idea of his barrier with and Locke is that if anyone gets close to it, it's like a pit of darkness that they're falling into. Like they're falling into a black hole, and it just disorients them and causes extreme fear and anxiety and causes them to basically back away without asking questions, being like, okay, we don't go near there. And it's like, that's because that's the idea that he had when he brought that concept into reality. And that shows how powerful magic can be if invoked in the correct means, with the correct knowledge. So it's a very simple scene that even I overlooked, but now thinking back on it, it is quite significant in its own way, that I might need to spend maybe a little bit more time on developing it. Because it does show, like, that's the biggest problem, because I only want this to be 2 books. So the biggest thing is going to be, everything is going to be so dense. It's going to be like, read a paragraph, sit back and be like, next paragraph. You know, like, you got to take it in. You can't just, like, speed through it. It's just too much information, but it's not really information. It doesn't feel like it, right? It's like walking through a beautiful flower field, staring at different flowers. It's like, you're just in the moment having a good time with it, and that's that's what I want to give.
Climatic magic system fight scenes, because scenes like this establish the rules that make that climatic scene feel credible and cool. But the pre-scene doesn't need to be a smaller version of the fight. It just needs to be able to establish those rules.
Yeah.
All of this makes the climax more believable and gives the reader the "oh, of course" moment, which is a great thing that you want your readers to have, particularly with magic systems. Part 5.
Like the idea of invoking a title, and like, we've already seen that magic can be invoked through a physical object, right? Well, what would happen if magic was invoked through a physical body? And that's essentially what titling is. But only people that have a strong connection with Gaia that can withstand her intervention between the main consciousness of the moon that facilitates magic and her connection with consciousness to the beings on the planet. And either the more advanced the being is, i.e. Husai, in his brain, being able to withstand more of her influence without being decimated, smaller intelligences can only manage on a scale of, like, instinct. Anything past instinct, anything that it's like Inception. They can't know that the idea came from an outside source. They have to believe that the idea is theirs, or they reject it. And that's kind of how our consciousness is inside of them. That it's like the idea that if you discovered that Jesus was actually inside of your heart, and if you connected with him, it would actually have, like, bad consequences. It's like, you didn't do that right? Maybe, you know. But it's all about the conceptualization of how you want to present how far ideas can go. So, you know, when I do something like, oh, we infuse magic into a weapon, I ask myself, well, what other things can it be infused in? Right? And then, okay, well, we have to show other things that can be infused in, and it's like effects. And people that can title have basically gone through some sort of traumatic life or death event. And they've had some sort of connection with Gaia that's unlocked a secret ability that she can do. That's based on their personality, right? And their job, essentially. So it's like something that fits them. Like Aetharg, for instance, his ability is to reset people's abilities. So he can reset people's titles. But only certain people's titles. Like, he can't reset the Time Mage's title. Theirs is like a 10-year cooldown. Anything past a year cooldown, he can't reset it. But and his is only a 1-year cooldown. And that's to show, like, the scale of, like, how amazing the Time Mage's ability is, that it's a 10-year cooldown, even when an ability that reduces the cooldown of everyone else's abilities that's less than a year is only a year. And most people's cooldowns are between, like, some of them are days, some of them are months. They're the more powerful, essentially, the less, the greater the cooldown. And that's another, like, you know, I treat, like, the idea of the UI and knowledge like that as just the knowledge in the back of the head that's being pressed by Gaia. And the reason why they can title is because they can feel that this is their own internal knowledge, and it's not something being bestowed upon them by a third party. So it's almost like they're just, like, instinctually have an internal timer that will tell them when their title is available again. It's like a feeling. But it doesn't, like, drain them or make them feel fatigued, you know? I guess a great explanation of it might be, like cutting your hair. Because it's, like, it's a change, but it's not really that much. But when you have, like long hair like me, and you, like, buzz cut that shit, man, that shit is fucked when you realize how heavy hair actually is on your head. And it's like, oh my god, I've been dealing with that this entire time? No wonder my neck is fucked. It's like, shit. But then it's like, you know, it gets back to that shoulder length again, right? So it's like, by the time it's down to shoulder length, okay, my cooldown's on. So I kind of think of it about it as that. Like, it's an internal inference for something that's like the idea of, like, hair growth. Where it's like, it's instinctual, you can just understand it and know it, but it's only part of your own head, right? It's just an internal clock that they deal with. And the idea of how consciousness works, and consciousness is fundamental, and consciousness creates reality, so thus consciousness can modify reality. But that takes on, like, if you're a physical form, you need to use a physicalness to create more physical. But if you're, like, a spirit entity, you can use your spirit in order to create a physical being in order to interact with the physical world, essentially. So, like, I want there to be, like, ancient relics, which would be, like, people that were martyred and like basically imbued their souls into weapons and armor, and they were like the most fanatic of the fanatic. So it's like they're literally like soul imbued weapons and armor that's literally like it has a consciousness of its own that kind of connects to the main like the character that's using it, and like to the point where it's like a character will say like it feels like it has a mind of its own, like it'll swing on its own, it'll block, a shield will block on its own, like the armor will like move you on its own kind of feeling, right? Where it's like if you're not keeping up to what it knows, it'll lend you a hand. And it's like that's the best armor in the game. That's the fucking plus 25 fucking Nexon fucking bullshit item that's like level 700 and like or like 9,999, and it's plus 25. And you spent like $6,000 getting it plus 25. And all of your armor is that, plus all of the gems inserted in them, those are plus 25, and it's like a fucking 6-socket or 8-socket rune word kind of thing. And it's like all of your armor and all your weapons is like this. You literally have the best of the best end game shit in the entire fucking game, and that's what they're gonna have.
Language?
Oh, your language. Language is consciousness. That's how language works in the book. Everything communicates through intent. Intent of sound. And that's another thing to explain how magic works as well, because everything is related to consciousness. Even the way that they interact with each other is fundamentally magic through consciousness and understanding. So every act that they take essentially is using that consciousness. So on a fundamental level at all points, that's how I'm going to explain the exposition of...
Valiant Boy Twitch shared X3. Thank you so much, Valiant Boy.
Thank you, Valiant Boy. You are such a generous soul, my friend.
3+1.
Like, oh my god.
Y3, but why not?
Why not? True, I agree, Valiant Boy. Why not?
I'm giving you my earth germs. I'm gonna kill you with my cold. Die, alien.
I'm not an alien, Dillweed. I'm a henchman. And you're not a venture brother. Who the hell are you?
I'm Hank's friend.
Yeah, I doubt that.
Would you believe I'm Brock Sampson's long-lost son?
If that were true, I don't think I would have caught you so easily.
I couldn't run because I had a lighter up my ass.
Okay, now I believe you're Hank's friend.
True, 24, true.
Realism. Now, on the absolute opposite end of the spectrum to magic systems, fight scenes not being realistic is a common critique, but writing a realistic fight scene doesn't necessarily make for a good fight scene. In George R. R. Martin's A Game of Thrones, Bronn takes on Sir Vardis Egan for Tyrion, and it's relatively realistic. Martin highlights how heavy his armor is, how Bronn's height gives him extra reach, and how the narrow slit of Vardis' visor limits his vision. But it's how he sets up all of these elements and pays them off when they play a role in Sir Vardis' death that makes for a good fight scene.
Yeah.
The main benefit of realism is that it helps with credibility and believability.
See, this is the kind of idea of what the Monarch does, especially with Zayd. Like, I want to have this great speech. Like Husai's the one who's seen the video, and Sid and Husai are the only ones who've seen the video. And in real life, what the Monarch did was, shh, go to sleep, and stabbed him straight through the heart with his sword, right? But in the play, in the immortalization of Zayd, the Monarch is going to do this grand thing, and it's going to be like this is going to be the moment that it not only uplifts the main character and says, oh my god, now I have something to fight for and strive for, and, like, you know, I can get out of my depression. It also gives all the other characters a reason to get away from the Monarch when they realize and they see. And it's like this massive, huge show where he's like getting up all the people that Zayd knocked out and says, this is how I'll treat the people that defy the people of the tree, because I'm here to defend the people of the tree, and their will alone is what I seek. Just kills an innocent person. And says, nah, you don't follow the rules, you fucking die. Period. And for the people in the tree, that's amazing, right? But for the adventurers on the outside of the tree, that's really fucked up. And that also shows, like, the duality of their existences. That, you know, especially how Husai used to see the tree, and you can see that from the beginning, and how it twists all throughout, like, the second and third chapter. His entire perspective of what the tree is. And then it shifts even more into the darker side. Like, he's like, maybe they're not all they say they are. And then it's like, holy fuck, no, they're not all they say they are. What the fuck? And it just, like, kicks everything into another fucking gear. But, like, a scene like that, and since, like, plays are super important for the exposition for being seen from Husai's eyes, and him picking up on certain things, and, like, connecting the dots between things that he can share with the reader that will allow him to be like, oh shit, dude, did you see that? Oh, I didn't know those guys. Oh, that's why. Okay, that makes sense. You know, it's like A equals B plus C over C squared equals D minus E F over T. Yes, I see it. It's all coming together. So there is an element of realism in the grounding of, like, thought process behind how things are done, but that's probably about it. And I want to be, like, as realistic for, like, movement and, like, using the maximum capacity I can. Because I love it when people put in, like, a certain species, but they don't, like, use the full extent of what that species is. It's like, oh, you just added this species in to spice things up. But it's like, no, like, the insectoids are a lot tougher and bigger and stronger than a lot of the avians and octopi. So they just tend to be better tanks, better melee, just better overall. Whereas avians are way better ranged in mages, or actually they're just better ranged because they can fly. And then insectoids are just better mages because of how intelligent they are and how they can understand the world. So it's like there is a scale of degree between each of the races for their own reasons that will be reflected through, like, how they move, how they act as a species overall, right? Like, the fact the octopi don't have a body, they're really hard to pin down and hit. It's literally just, like, a floating head with, like, things coming out. You got the back legs braided down for their legs, and they you know, they don't, so they can, like, weave and bob, and, like, I imagine them moving like a chicken. You know how, like, a chicken's head doesn't move when its body moves? So it'd be like the octopi moves its head forward and then, like, puts a leg forward and then kind of, like, jaunts, like, kind of weaves, right? And it'd be like if my arms were the legs, it'd be like, but he'd be like, you know, like, kind of bobbing, like a spring almost, you know? Because it's not, like, completely straight, so it's like his legs are kind of wavy, but they're strong and they hold up the head, right? And then he can move his arms. Whereas, like, avians are, like, half snakes, so they move with their tails slithering, right? They don't have legs. And then insectoids can kind of fly with their wings, at least glide a little bit, but they're mainly, like, centaur ladybugs. They're all, like, on 4 legs with 2 arms. Some of them are on 2 legs with 4 arms with their wings adding, like, a little bit of stabilization, right? So it's like each species I've thought out specifically, and the reason why the species was created, because the avians are originally scouts and the insectoids were supposed to be the vanguard, and that was the monarch's plan to genocide the beastmen, but the dragons were just too much, so then he went the nuclear option, which was pulling the moon out of the sky. And even then, that still didn't succeed, but it did wipe a significant amount of them off, like 90% of the beastmen, despite how much are left. Like, they were literally everywhere because, you know, there hadn't been any octopi on the land. They came out of the water and started attacking and taking over the land at the monarch's command. So they said, these vile creatures, kill them all! And people were like, this guy's gave us so much technology and understanding, and he's evolved our species. Let's fucking go, guys. Let's claim this new land for ourselves.
Allowing you to then build on that with more creative and fantastical elements which we buy into. But what are the fundamentals of realistic fighting? Hell if I know. My area of expertise is essay writing and boring people to death with philosophical arguments from the 1800s. But I know my audience, and I know you like swords.
Yup. Yep, Shadiversity!
Did somebody say swords?
Which is why I've got someone who knows a lot more about this sort of thing than I do to talk to you about realism. Shad?
Oh, Tim, it would be my pleasure. So, what are real sword fights actually like? So, first thing to understand is that not every type of real...
Oh, okay. So this is one interesting point. The main character is human, right? So he has like a footing and movement advantage. But he's also ambidextrous. And his main thing is he uses a two-handed sword, but he swaps from left-handed stance to right-handed stance to angle his blade. And this causes different deflections. So I don't know about you, I'm left-handed. If you've ever fought someone who uses a different hand than you versus the same hand as you, there's a significant difference in the angle that the blade will deflect at because of the angle of the blade. It's a really interesting phenomenon because both your blades are like this as opposed to your blades being like that, right? They're literally both facing each other. So people don't know why he's so good, but the reason is because of that. So when people fight him, they're like, wait, what the fuck is going on? I'm so confused as to what's going on. And then he just bests them. And that's why he was always a great fighter when he was younger, when he was an adventurer. And now he's kind of picking that back up again after now he's been a scholar. And he's like, throughout the entire book, I'm going to have him like working out and shit like that. And it's like you're going to slowly see his muscle mass increase as he's like working out and like building up his muscle and not being a pushover inside of the fucking tree anymore and getting his shit together and stuff. And then by the end, he's gonna be like this fucking huge beast of a fucking He-Man dude, like fucking raging shit out with his fucking great sword, going gut style and shit. And then using magic on top of that. It's gonna be fucking sick, guys.
Form of combat is equivalent in how they play out. For instance, unarmed combat is very different to combat with a sword. Fighting with a sword and shield is very different with fighting against a sword and sword, because a shield is actually a defensive weapon that can help prolong the length of a battle because it's much easier to block incoming strikes.
And what I just said there also applies to people wearing armor, especially metal plate armor.
But when you get into a situation where all you have is a weapon, whether it's a polearm or it's just a big axe.
There's another thing, it's like how the octopi, because they don't have a body, right? They just, like, their arms, but they don't have a chest piece, right? They've kind of got, like, how would you explain this? Like a double helmet? Because it's like a helmet that goes, like, all the way around their head, and then it's just, like, their eye slits, so, and then, like, the sides coming out their body, so it's like their helmet is their torso piece, and then kind of connected to that is like the leg piece and the arm pieces. So they have, because they're tentacles, they can suction cup and hold onto the armor that they're wearing. For instance, like plate or whatever. In this case, it would be like scales. Like they would do like chainmail, but it'd be like scale mail, right? So instead of having like a full scale, it would be like little small pieces all set together so the movement would be fluid of the legs. Same with how the avians would do it, because they would need their tails to be able to move with the armor. So it's like even thinking about the realism of how they wear their armor is actually like the main point I should be focusing on, is how they wear their armor, how it's possible with the structure of their bodies. The one thing I haven't figured out is how do the insectoids wear armor that allows their shells to open and their wings to come out? That's a mystery I have yet to solve. It may require getting rid of the idea that they're ladybugs. I mean, I don't want to, but hey, I'm not married to any idea if it doesn't work.
Or sword against someone who is in the same kind of situation, the first thing that you're going to learn about real, combat in that regard, they're short. The exchanges are very short until someone is either defeated or they're dead, okay? And how do we know this? Well, from modern day reenactment and also historical European martial arts. When we recreate this in the modern world, That's the reality of what we find. Now, in regards to unarmed combat, you'll also notice that generally they can be a lot shorter as well, and one solid hit on the side of someone's chin can knock them out cold. In fantasy, but also fiction, adventure, action movies, or whatever, generally you see the people getting hit in the head again and again and again, and they're perfectly fine. This is very
Goku and
common with, say,
Frieza.
Jackie Chan fight scenes. But in addition to that, Jackie Chan, he gets glassed on the head. Like someone picks up a glass bottle, smashes him across the head in multiple times in his movies, okay, and he just and he keeps fighting, okay. That would be devastatingly and almost lethal if you did it in real life. Like, picked up a glass bottle and smashed someone over the head. I can almost...
The insectoid armor is their molted exoskeletons layered over their current shell. The older they get, the more layers they had to wear. But, like, armor is very, very important because you can't just imbue physical flesh. So they have to have actual armor. It's just how that armor is designed in a way that allows a flap. Right? Like, it's one thing to have, like, a tail slit in the bottom of your torso piece for a character that has a tail, but not so easy. Chitin is armor, so once it molts, you can craft it and enchant it. I mean, it's true. It's an interesting concept. And it would definitely, like, single the insectoids out in their own right. I'm just imagining them getting fatter and fatter until they can't stand up anymore. But I don't know anything about bugs. Some may even wear the chitin armor of an ancestor who was famous in their day. I mean, it's an interesting concept. We'll have to work. Well, we'll have to flesh it out and see how it works. Because I already, like, it works in a sense because I already have, each species has its own way of crafting armor, right? Because they all have very specific needs for their, for like shape and what it is, right? So having them have their own, and the fact that, like, they are genetically engineered from the beginning to be the vanguard. So it would make sense that they would have a genetic enhancement that would allow that I mean, when they were made, magic didn't exist, right? Because the moon hadn't been pulled out of the sky yet. So it wouldn't have been part of, like, a magic idea, but it would mold well with magic in the idea of them, like, kind of shedding their skins, right? So maybe that's, like, I'm thinking, like, immediately off the bat, like, I'm thinking, like, a mating ritual thing. Or, like, with antlers on, like, a moose or an elk. Something like that. Where it's like their shell gets so thick that it just, like, falls off. And then they, reinforce that, recraft that into, like, armor, right? So it definitely, it has a lot of merit. And it works completely, that's what I love about the story, is that, like, I feel like Hellish Mist with this, where you could just throw in any idea and it's like, yeah, that'll work. It's like, to an extent. But that is a really, really good idea. So I'll flesh it out more, and I'll get back to you on that. And if you want to do the same, let me know.
Kill him. Do not kill him. It's going to cause massive injury, okay? And so another big difference between real fighting and, you know, fictional fantasy fighting is that injuries happen a lot quicker and a lot easier. And that will generally end the fight right there. And this is...
And that's kind of like, it goes to show, like, they defend most of the attacks in Chapter 1 from the Emerald Weapon, but as soon as the Emerald Weapon pulls out his fucking saber arms, their defenses get shattered. And as soon as their defenses get shattered, it's like, oh shit, okay, we're going full offense. And that is one of the main reasons why they completely get fucked over by the canon, and the reason why the Time Mage has to title and go back. Because basically everyone died because they were on the full offensive trying to kill the weapon before it fired. But they didn't make it. So she was like, or he was like, I don't remember fucking the character, but they're like, title, go back in time. Okay, these are the defenses we need to defend. Go into full defensive mode. Get behind the fucking tanks. Fucking blah. And you're like, 8th Arc's like, alright, everyone, defensive title, let's go! You heard the Time Mage when they titled! And everyone knows this is like the major moment. It's literally like someone saying, okay, I hacked the game for you guys for 5 seconds. Do what you gotta do in that 5 seconds. Kill the boss.
Like, not only this is not only doubly so, but so much more so when you throw in a deadly weapon like a sword, okay? And so when you're in a real fight with a sword and you have two opponents facing off against each other, oftentimes the fight will end in the first to maybe third, fourth exchange, where someone might come in with a thrust and there might be a parry riposte and then come in with a counter thrust. That could end it right there. Sometimes you do a feint to get the opponent to engage the blade in the way you want, like so, and then you come around with a counter strike like that. And that was 2 moves which can end the fight right then. It's actually far more rare to see a sword fight, but this is also an extension to any type of fight with swords that don't really have shields. It's rare for them to just get extended out in a series of parries, exchanges, blocks, and hits, and counters. They do happen. Rarely.
But I should say that these longer drawn-out real-world sword fights are never as long as most cinematic sword fights that you see in film.
More often than not, the real fight is ended very, very quickly, sometimes even in the first move, and that's actually what you...
Okay, I want to show something to prove his point to, like, an extreme level. The Night of Dawn? I can't remember the character. Yeah, Sir Arthur Dane. Like, try and count how many strikes this is.
Sir Arthur Dane?
The Sword of the Morning.
Father said he was the best swordsman he ever saw.
Lord Stark?
I looked for you on the Trident.
We weren't there.
Your friend, the usurper, would lie beneath the ground if we had been.
The Mad King is dead. Rhaegar lies beneath the ground. Why weren't you there to protect your prince?
Our prince wanted us here.
Where's my sister?
I wish you good fortune in the wars to come. And now it begins.
No. Now it ends.
One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay, here's the real one. Get ready. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67. Four, 17, 22, 3, 4, 5.
Hobbit.
But this one's supposed to show a point, right? That Sir Arthur Dane is not fighting to kill Ned. That is the whole point that this fight is extended for.
I know he did. Heard the story 1,000 times.
And that's the reason why it lasts so long. Is because he's purposefully not trying to kill him. Not trying to, but still happens. That's why you make sure your quarry is dead.
He stabbed him in the back.
But it's like, he's fighting how many opponents? I think it was 8, right? Was it 8 or was it 6? Let's see if we get a zoom out. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So there's 4 against 1. That's 12 hits. While defending 4 people, on average, it took 12 hits for him to kill someone. That means 4 to defend, 4 to set up, 3 more to defend, and then 1 for a killing blow. Honor Harrington duel. 1 move from Honor, and dude is already dead, looking confused at how he could have lost. Exactly. Exactly. It's like, what's the tempo of, like, your fight there, right? And it's like, they have, what changes the tempo? And changing the tempo there is learning that Sir Arthur Dane is not to be trifled with. And that's kind of like how I want to present the Monarch, where it's like, and same with like Garuda going up against Fafnir. It's like everyone thinks they're going in with an easy fight, and they come out fucking basically dead.
Want to achieve as a swordsman. You want to either end them with the first hit or end them with the first defense. I was watching a HEMA tournament once where one opponent came down with a high strike like this, okay? And the defender, he simply did this, okay? Where he blocked the incoming strike like that, but with the extended portion of his blade, he hit his opponent right underneath their armpit. It was what is called a single tempo riposte. Now, a riposte is generally when you attack back or counter your opponent's move, and tempo is how many moves it takes to perform your action. And so a feint, like I showed before, like where you're there, that's...
I swear Aussies and North Americans like medieval shit more than Europeans. Is this how Japanese feel about weebs? Yes, Eggy. I think that's exactly how it feels. I fucking love medieval shit. You know why, Eggy? It's because we don't live it. So to us, it truly is a fantasy. But when you live it every day, and you've seen it every day, it becomes mundane. But when you live in North America, where there is nothing like this, nothing like a castle like this. Like, nothing like there is in anywhere in Europe, right? So it's to you, it's completely normal. To us, it's almost fantastical because it feels like it's out of this world.
it's a 2-tempo move. And so a single tempo riposte is a riposte where it's done in one move and it's ended right then. It showed remarkable
I'm looking at a
skill
medieval
and
castle
timing
right now.
of the defendant who was
You
able
lucky
to pull it
fuck.
off.
I'm looking
And
at
it
a dead
was beautiful,
field
but
of
would
snow.
it work in
April.
action movie?
Buttercup,
fantasy fight scene?
1993. Welcome, welcome. Hi, baby. How's it going? The difference between a European and an American. A European thinks 100 miles is a long distance, and an American thinks 100 years is a long time. Sean, that is great. I love that. I love that. Is this your dad? I watch you walking the dog on the beach because I'm just kicking his football and he's boring. Lol. True.
Sometimes. This is when you need to balance on how realistic you want your fights versus how exciting, engaging, drawn out, and just, you know, amazing with the fancy moves that are being executed. A series like Game of Thrones, for instance, lends itself to more gritty, realistic fight scenes, but even in Game of Thrones, say you had two swordsmen that came, you know, to fight on each other, and they were just masters, like the best of the best. Well, then you could actually kind of try and justify a fight scene that was extended out a bit more in their exchanges, where there is blocks, ripostes, parries, feints, and the fight is drawn out in a really engaging way where you don't know who's going to win or lose. So even
Brienne versus the Mountain is another good
what
example.
is technically far more unrealistic style of sword fighting, but you can include realistic style moves in a fight that generally wouldn't play out the way that you're showing it, where it's extended with a lot of interchange back and forth. Because going back to that original point, real fights generally are very quick and are over very quickly, and injuries happen very easily.
And that's kind of a difference to show, like, with the plays and stuff like that, how, like, over-dramatized, overplayed, overacted absolutely everything is to, like, an absurd level, right? Because it's entertainment. It's like the reality of a car chase versus the Fast and the Furious. It's like, it's just so otherworldly out there beyond imagination because it's so far from reality. American takes a short drive to a manor house. I can't believe you made the drive all the way out here. Takes them on a tour. How old is the house? Host chuckles. It's only 5 centuries at this point, practically brand new.
But now, for the summary, let's get down to business. Firstly, fight scenes are still scenes. Consider using the 3-act structure with multiple escalations.
We already have that. We
each
passed
escalation
it.
having a power
I love we don't need
narrative
notes
importance,
because we
or character
passed.
importance. On top of this,
Best
ask
fights
whether
show
your fight
power
scene
dynamics like Vader and Luke. Yeah, and it's like we do that super well with like coordination in, at least that's the idea in like the first chapter, about how it literally took everything for all of the characters for them to work together to finally overcome this weapon. And then when you find out what that weapon actually is and its significance to the story, and when you have to fight it again and the main characters come in and they fucking bop it in one fucking hit, that's the show of the power dynamic. To show that these people that were thought to be the strongest in the world, that took everything they had to defeat the Emerald Weapon, and it's not like the Emerald Weapon was weaker in any way, shape, or form. No. That's just how much more powerful the main characters are than the last generation. They just Emerald Weapon down and out like it was a fucking joke. But a lot of that comes down to pre-knowledge and scouting, which is a huge thing that they do. And having the Warriors of Light and not having like a way of knowledge around it. It's another interesting point that puts a target almost on the back of these characters. Whoops. That you're like, wait, are these characters important? And for sure as fuck they are. They're just pretending not to be goddamn important. But they're the most important characters. Even more important than Husai. Because they have the genetic enhancements of the Monarch and the Viceroy. So, they are unbelievably fucking powerful. And they have the ability to commune with Gaia. So just shows the power scaling, like, way go out of hand. And then, of course, you know, they fight Fafnir, and it's, like, not even an even match. Fafnir almost shits on them because he's not even trying. And then all of them going up against the Monarch, and the Monarch just fucking destroys them to the point that, you know, they kill Fafnir. And then you come back even later in the second book after you've gathered the best armor, the best gear, the best possible things for the best everything, and you basically blow up the planet trying to kill the Monarch. And you still can't kill him. And the guy has to blow up the planet anyways. And it's like, well, fucking shit, dick, balls, fuck. And then the conflict between Husai and Gaia at the end, where Husai's like, just obliterate my consciousness, take me over, control me like Anima's doing to them, and make, you know, defeat them. And she's like, you don't understand the loss of consciousness. It's too great a risk. We'll all be together soon. And then she blows up the planet.
It's a reactive scene. Secondly, longer fight scenes don't just use multiple escalations, but use numerous objectives that allow for de-escalation as well, success or failure of the characters. They also often give multiple characters different objectives. Thirdly, turning your fight scene into a problem-solving scene will make it immediately more multi-dimensional and interesting. Fourthly, figure out what narrative or character...
And that's why it's like with the shot calling in Chapter 1, it's like, okay, go for its legs. Oh shit, it's changing its tactics. We need to change our tactics. Okay, stay away from its arms. Try and, you know, pin down its vision so it can't see. Okay, we destroyed its head. Maybe its sensors are fucked, you know? Like, it's just continuously changing tactics throughout the entire battle as each enemy and, like, protagonist and antagonist in the scene fight against each other and maneuver with each other's moves, right? Until eventually one comes out on top.
To question the fight scene is really asking, exploring, and perhaps answering. Fifthly, consider pairing your climactic magic system fight scene with the conclusion of a character arc or theme, so that neither of these elements get left behind.
Yeah.
Sixthly, fight scenes are a great...
And all those moments will come back to play another role. And in, like, exact wording, like the shh, go to sleep, stabs him through the heart, and stuff like that. Like, very, very specific things that only certain characters know at certain points.
Way to deliver magic system exposition at the start. However, climactic magic system fight scenes really rely on pre-scene foreshadowing to give good
Which
payoff.
is perfect.
So
We
make
learned
sure
this
you
from
set
this.
those up. And seventhly, well, I recorded this before I got Shad's bit, so I don't know what he said, but the summary is whatever's on screen right now. So, yeah, just remember, kids.
Fight scenes are complicated.
And I really implore you to go watch the other video I made on fight scenes before this one.
Already
It's
did,
more
brother.
in-depth, it's more interesting and way more important, going into the pros and the micro fight scenes that a lot of people don't usually discuss, and a lot of writers don't focus on nearly enough. The micro
we do,
is super important.
we
The links
passed
are up in
that
the corner of
test
the
too,
screen.
guys.
Please do share them with people that you think might find these educational videos helpful. As always, thank you to all my patrons. I'm gonna go